guys, welcome back to another podcast on the MMA.Unhinged channel. Today we are yet again joined by my co-host here today, Oscar Silva. How's it going over there in America?
It's going great. We finally got some fights after a 3-week hiatus. That 3-week hiatus was some of the toughest weeks I can recall. Those weekends really improved my week.
Yeah, I agree. It was certainly hard to not try and watch, not being able to watch the fights, having some great fights, but then they came back with an absolute bang of a show, and I enjoyed it so much. And we'll talk about it in this show. We're going to talk about UFC Fight Island 7, and then we're going to talk about Magny versus Chiesa, and then UFC 257 will be its own video by itself later on in the week. But yeah, we had great fights this weekend. Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, an absolute main event delivered, and I was so happy for that Max Holloway to get back to winning ways after his controversial, his 2 fights against Alexander Volkanovski. But now he's back in the win column against an absolute, an absolute clinic versus Calvin Kattar. And it was an absolute great performance. And I can't wait to see what's next for Max Holloway. Whether it is the UFC 257 fight, if one of them pulls out, or it is Alexander Volkanovski, that trilogy, if it is granted by Uncle Dana, hopefully. So we'll go straight into the first fight of the evening. Jacob Kilburn versus Austin Lingo. A fight was a bit. Jacob Kilburn attempted 18 takedowns in this fight, and he was relentless. He threw 201 strikes, but Austin Lingo just kind of had that that better more about him, and he dominated the fight. It was 30-27, 30-26. 30-26. It was a great fight to start off the card as well. To start off the card, it was a really underrated fight. Great fight between the two. They traded punches, but Austin Lingo was the sharper on the feet, landed more on the feet. He threw less, but landed more, and he defended them takedowns really well from Jacob Kilburn. But that was the story of the fight. Every time, you get pressured from Austin Lingo, Jacob would shoot and he would defend. And he only scored 1 takedown out of 18 shots. It was great from Austin Lingo to stiff them takedowns and come back with punches and eventually, get that unanimous decision. 30-26 on the scorecard as well in its 3-round fight. That's a 10-8 round. It was absolutely good performance from Austin Lingo. And he's an exciting fighter to watch, and it was a really, really good. What do you reckon?
Well, this was the first event with fans back. There was about 2,000 fans in attendance at the Etihad Arena, and Lingo and Kilburn put on a show for them. 2 of the judges scored it a 10-8 for Lingo in the first round, and rightfully so. He knocked him down early on. I really thought he was going to knock him out, but Lingo was just had the ability to stay in the fight. No, I mean Kilburn had the ability to stay in the fight. That's by taking that amount of punishment. And I do think that Kilburn may not be UFC caliber, but I do think Lingo is, especially after going to American Top Team. He's improved a ton, and we saw that his striking is miles ahead.
100%, I agree. The durability of Jacob Kilburn, he took a lot of shots in that fight, and but he stuffed, winged it out, got to the judges' scorecard in his own right. That's a moral victory. I think it was in his first fight he got someone tough as well. It might have been Billy Q if I remember.
It was.
Yeah,
he got submitted.
Yeah, he got submitted by Billy Q, and he got Austin Lingo. He's not been handed the best, handed the easiest opponents. He's got in there with the tough competition, and there's no shame in losing to Austin Lingo and Billy Q. And he's got to hold his head up high. Sort the stuff he needs to work on, come back stronger, and get that win in the UFC. I was impressed with how many shots he could take. The durability, he just kept on coming, and Austin Lingo looked great that night. How many punches he put together, and as you said, he just looked better on the feet with his move to ATT. He looked phenomenal. Second fight.
I agree.
Yeah, second fight of the night. We had Sarah Moras versus Vanessa Mello. Probably the battle of the worst records in this fight. 6-6, 6-7. I think she was coming into the fight. Sarah, and she gets She loses the fight by unanimous decision 28-29, 28-29, and 30-27. Vanessa, was just more active. She was more crisper on the feet. She was getting engaging, coming into the phone booth. She was more, getting in there, winning to, scrap it up a little bit. Sarah Moraes was just like, sticking to her jab, circling around the cage and trying to just, work at distance. Vanessa Mello wanted to get in and land some punches. And that's what we saw. She was a very small woman, small for the division at bantamweight. And maybe I would like to see her drop down. I don't know what her weight cut is like, but if she could drop down, that would be a possibility. She was very small for the bantamweight. No woman landed a knockdown in this fight, but I think Vanessa Mello, she was more active, more crisper on the feet. That was the story of this fight, and she kind of just got in, kind of ragdolled her in the phone booth. It was just the battle of the clinch. Really, they just came in, stepped in, and they kind of just threw punches in the phone booth, and Mello just kind of got the best of her, and she went to unanimous decision 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. It was a good a second fight to open the night. And it was kind of a good fight for Vanessa Mello to get back into the wins as well. She was on a 3-fight losing streak. She fought some tough opponents in her last few fights as well. She gets back into the win column and she moves on. What do you reckon of the second fight of the evening? Alright guys, welcome back to the podcast. We had some technical difficulties with me with the camera, hence the switch. And now we're having technical difficulties with the network. And Oscar had to switch to his phone. But we're back. Where was we? Vanessa Mello versus Sarah Moraes. You didn't get your point across, so how did you see that fight?
Yeah, the inaccuracy of these two was astounding. I thought that Mello was making a lot of noise. She was throwing a lot, but she didn't land. Moraes was using the leg kicks to kick things off, but she stopped using them, and that cost her the fight.
100%, I agree. It was Sarah Moraes landed 44 out of 200 of her strikes, and Vanessa Mello, on the other hand, landed 56 out of 169. As you said there perfectly, both women were inactive, but it was just Vanessa Mello, the more busy woman, the woman who wanted to get inside and trade punches, and that was her. And she landed the more meaningful strikes, in my opinion, and she got that nod at unanimous decision. Moving on to probably one of the good fights on the card, Ramzat Emeev versus David Zawada in a split decision. Ramzat Emeev takes the nod that night. Do you agree with that?
I do. When they announced that one judge scored it for Zawada, I was shocked. I actually thought that Amib 100% won that fight. Amib was able to take him down when he wanted to. He was able to escape the submission attempts, and he was able to establish octagon control, thus giving him the decision. I think Amib is someone to watch in this welterweight division.
Yeah, I agree with you there. 4 out of 9 takedowns for Emeev in that fight, and he had 4 minutes and 28 seconds of control time throughout the fight, and he landed the more shots. According to ESPN, he landed the more significant shots, but total strikes, David Zawada topped him on that just by a few, though, just by 10 strikes or more. But Emeev, he had that pressure, had them take down, as you said there, he could take him down at any time he wanted, and he did that 4 times within the fight, and he got that, 4 minutes and 28 seconds of a control time, and he went on to edge a really close split decision. But, it could have went either way, and it went Emeev's way, and I do agree with that decision. Moving on to a really good fight, in my opinion. This was Carlos Felipe versus. Well, this was an amazing fight, actually. This was probably almost one of the fight of the nights. Carlos Felipe versus Justin Tafa. An absolutely incredible fight. That last 40 seconds of the round 3 was incredible. Both men were sat there in the pocket, trading punches. It was beautiful to watch. A proper heavyweight showdown, and I loved it. Both of these men are proper heavyweights. They come in at the limit at heavyweight. 265 pounds these boys come in, and it was a brilliant fight between the both of them. Carlos Felipe edged it, and I agreed with that. I think Carlos Felipe looked good in that fight, and he got the win. And he proves to, I think it's 2 fights back to back now, beating Jorgen De Castro and now beating Justin Tafa. He looks out good at the moment. What do you reckon about Carlos Felipe in the fight?
Felipe looked really good. I thought he was outmatched to begin with. I did think he would win, but as soon as they got in there and I saw Tafa landing the more significant strikes and just shutting down his game, I thought that it would definitely be going to Tafa, but later on he hit him with a body shot in the second round. He went down. But Tafa's really tough, man. He went in there and he started swinging for the fences, and so did Felipe. And I think Felipe lighted the more significant strikes in the judge's eyes, and that gave him the nod. But I do think that Tafa, with that control time, he had him against the fence for a good minute in that third round. I do think you could have given it to Tafa that night.
Yeah, a fight was very close in the last 40 seconds. They just swung for the fences. It was a great fight, as you said there perfectly. Could have went either way. Justin Tafa bouncing back after his knockout loss against Jorgen De Castro, knocked out Juan Adams, and then unfortunately falls back to the lost column against Carlos Felipe. But a guy that's looking good as of late. Against Jorgen De Castro, outpointed him, and now against Justin Tafa, outpointed him as well. His only loss comes against Sergey Spivak, which is not, there's no shame in that loss. He's a really good heavyweight contender. Beat some really good guys that Sergey has. I think he even fought Walt Harris, fought Marcin Tybura, beat Tai Tuivasa, and he's a really good fighter. But Carlos Felipe goes two back-to-back wins against Jorgen De Castro and Justin Tafa at UFC Fight Night, UFC on ESPN 1, should I say. And it was a great win for him, and he moves on to the heavyweight division. I think he called out Maurice Green after that fight, and I like that matchup. I think that's a really good matchup for him, and a proper sensible call out as well.
I agree.
In the next fight, we had the debutant, Jocelyn Edwards, the first ever UFC female Panama fighter, and she came in against Yanan Wu of China at 135 pounds. And Edwards looked so good, man. I think she's a proper contender at 135 pounds as well. Her frame, how long she is, she looks really good. She won that fight. A judge gave it to Yanan Wu, 28-29, 30-27, 30-27. In my opinion, I thought it was 30-27. I thought Edwards controlled all the fight. Even though Yanan Wu got one takedown, but she didn't really. She got 3 minutes and 49 seconds control time in that fight. I think Jocelyn Edwards was good with her punches on the feet. She looks like a real problem in that bantamweight division, and I'm just excited to see where she goes in that division. She landed 111 strikes with her 206. This is what we talk about in accuracy. The fight we were talking about earlier, 44-200, that, this is how you land punches. She landed more than half of her punches in that fight. She looked incredible, and I can't wait to see what's next for her in the future. I think she put on a great performance that night against Yanan Wu.
Yeah, I thought Edwards she even landed a drop kick off of her back. That was really awesome. I thought that this fight was way funner than I expected it to be. I didn't think it would be too exciting coming into it, but Edwards is fun to watch, and she was able to establish octagon control and just destroy Wu. I thought Wu really looked outmatched, and she hasn't fought in a while, and I don't think she's really improved during that time. I do think that Edwards had no business being an underdog in this fight.
Yeah, you said that Yanan Wu hasn't fought in a while. She fought against Mizuki Inui back in 2019 of the 8th month. Oh, I'm so bad with the months. What's the 8th month off the top of the head? August?
That is August. Yes, it
Hey,
is.
August. So she fought in 2019 of August, and she's took like a whole almost 2 years off. But she came back, lost against Jocelyn Edwards, and she's just a bit. See where she goes from here. I think she's 1-3 now in the UFC. Not a good look for her with the cuts of the UFC at the moment. But we'll talk about next fight. A battle of the undefeated, one that I actually betted on, and I won money over Puna, and it was a great fight in my opinion. Puna looked like he has that heavy hands, and Dusko Todorovic, paid the price. If you get clipped by Puna, you're gonna get put out soon, and that's what happened this fight. He got put out bad, and he went on to 8-0, and Dusko unfortunately gets derailed off the unbeaten ranks, and unfortunately, gets a loss. But Puna looked incredible that night. How do you think Puna looked?
Now, Puna looked as good as anyone can look. He got a first round knockout, and we had a little disagreement in the DMs. You sent me your bets. I was like, no, I just think Dusko Todorovic has better cardio. Well, that cardio did not matter because he was thinking he was Anderson Silva when he's not. That guy's defense has a lot left to be desired. He got clipped, and he could not recover once he got clipped. And how about that mouthpiece almost
Oh, again,
falling
yeah.
in a spot?
Hmm.
Could you imagine? Just to let you know, this event was streamed in ABC here in the United States. It's on normal television. You don't need cable. You don't need to pay anything extra for it. Anybody can just be flipping through channels and they'll come across it. Imagine, imagine if that mouthpiece was under the octagon for like 5 minutes and they lost a lot of viewers. That would have been detrimental to this whole broadcast on ABC. Well, in Dusko Todorovic, he was undefeated before this, and the guys he was fighting did not have the power of Soriano. And Soriano taught him a very valuable lesson to keep your hands up, to work on his defense.
He said they didn't really have the power, but if you go back and look at his record, you know, he's fought some very questionable records. You know, he fought a guy with 29, 27, 20, 20, 20 and 8. Some fight. He actually fought Michel Pereira back in the day on the regional
Knocked him
scene.
out.
Knocked him out, yeah. And then his last fight, he knocked out Deacon Townsend, the guy that just came into the UFC for the payday. He lost every fight in the UFC, I believe. Yeah, he went. Did he go 0-4 in the
He
UFC?
did.
He went 0-4 in the UFC. He was on the Contender Series. He lost against Jamel Hill. Yeah, that guy just no. He wasn't a Contender Series. He just came in for the payday. I went 0-4 for the UFC, but I wouldn't blame him. You know, but you know, Dusko Todorovic. You know, if you look at his record, you know, hasn't fought the most notable guys. Beat Teddy Ash to get the contract on the Contender Series. Fought Michel Pereira before that fight and knocked him out. But you know, the guy he fought, guy 20, 29, 27, 10 and 4, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 8 and 0, you know, some questionable guys. But you know, that you know you can't he's legit. We've seen him. He's got some really good skills. You said there the audio, yeah, not audio. It's because I saw the audio at the top of my screen. His cardio, I mean, his cardio is very good. And you said that the cardio would come into play, and I kind of agreed with you. I think that our cardio would come into, if it goes to the second or third round, Dusko would start to turn over. But Puna didn't let it. He put his hands on him and he knocked him out. Yep, that's pretty much what happened in that fight. And then moving on to the fight, which was I thought was a mismatch in my opinion. I thought Joaquin Buckley was going to go in there, knock him out, get another highlight reel knockout, and maybe not a spinning one, maybe not a good one, but just get another KO. And it came to my shock that, you know, Alessio De Chiara was keeping his range quite well. He was setting up them kicks. I think he showed the kick to the left body once, and then he just went the right high kick straight up to the top, to the head, to the dome, knocked out Joaquin Buckley, and absolutely folded him. It looked absolutely brilliant. You know, it was an absolute pitch perfect kick, and didn't do no interviews after that. He doesn't like people not interviewing the losers, but I kind of like it when they don't interview the losers. Just if they've just got knocked out. No, I don't like to see that. But you know, Dana White was confused about what he was going on about. But you know, nonetheless, we can't take that away from his performance. He looks good. Knocked out a highlight reel knockout against the highlight reel knockout again of Joaquin Buckley. And you know, it's sad to see what Joaquin Buckley said, that he wanted a ranked opponent after this. He said he wants James Krause. That all looks a bit silly. But you know, Alessio now takes that win in his stride. A head kick knockout and a KO. You know, a brilliant KO. What do you reckon about Alessio's knockout with a head kick?
Yeah, it was a beautiful head kick. Alicio Di Chirico was on a three-fight skid heading into this, and in his last contest, he got knocked down at the end of it against Zach Cummins, and he was very wobbly once he got up. And that's what I expected for Joaquin Buckley to do. I expected him to land something wild and to put him down, but that just didn't happen. This sport is unforgiving. You live by the sword, you die by the sword, and he got very popular with that head kick, and now he got hit with a head kick. It's just how the sport works. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, exactly. I think I know what photo you're talking about. I saw a photo on Instagram of him knocking Impa out, and then him getting knocked out, and it was like, live, as I said there, live by the sword, die by the sword. Yeah, unfortunately, he did get knocked out against Alessio in that fight, but, Alessio set up beautifully, executed beautifully, and got the KO. Moving on to the most surprising upset on the card, in my opinion. I thought Santiago Ponzinibbio was going to come in, return in impressive fashion, but it's that ring rust. I think it was a ring rust of not being in the cage for a long time, the health issues he had outside the cage, the injuries, the time he had off. It was just all paid apart. And Jing Lang, though, he looked good. He looked good. He catched him with that counter left and put the lights out of Santiago Ponzinibbio in round number 1. I did not expect that. I really didn't expect it. And he hit him with that left hook counter. It was beautiful. Caught him off guard, and an absolute great win under his belt. This is why MMA math don't work. Santiago Ponzinibbio knocked out Neil Magny. Jing Liang lost against Neil Magny. He didn't throw his hands. He wasn't active enough. In this fight, he was active enough. He knocked out Santiago Ponzinibbio, and he gets that win in impressive fashion with a great KO. How do you reckon this? How do you feel about this fight, and how do you feel about Jing Liang?
I was a big fan of Ponzinibbio, and when it was really sad to see him knocked out after a 7-fight win streak. I thought he was on the way to the top 5, but it just didn't matter because he took that big layoff, and it wasn't his choice, of course. He got COVID, he got an infection, he had to have surgery. It was just unfortunate that this guy was so talented. He had wins over Mike Perry, Gunnar Nelson, and Neil Magny, who was now main eventing the card this Wednesday, and we'll never see him at the top because of that layoff. I do think that Li Ching Liang was just gonna win that night regardless because of that layoff. I couldn't trust Ponzinibbio with that long layoff. Ponzinibbio got hit with one big shot and he was down, he was out. He protested a stoppage. I didn't think that was a reason to do that. I thought he was clearly out.
Mm-hmm.
And Li Ching Liang is going to be ranked after this for sure.
Yeah, maybe what's it today? Today is it Monday? So the rankings would have been out by now. Let me give a quick check to see if he got ranked in the UFC.
I think they actually update on Tuesday.
Is it Tuesday or Monday?
I believe it's Tuesday.
Oh, I always thought it was Monday. My bad. What way? Yeah, it's still McGregor. So it must be Tuesday. So yeah, he, as you said there, he's definitely going to get ranked in my as well. I think he's going to get ranked with a win over Ponzinibbio. And it's interesting to see where he goes from here. Ponzinibbio, does he, take some more time off to work on what went wrong, or does he get straight back in there and try and get a win? He's in a bit of a sticky situation at the moment. But Jing Liang, great performance. As you said there, that ring rust from Ponzinibbio played a massive factor in this fight, and it was hard to, as you said, it's correct. It was hard to put any confidence in Santiago. They with a fight coming back, they give him a really good contender in Jing Liang, who just lost against Neil Magny. But, moving on from here, Santiago Ponzinibbio will get straight back in the gym, I presume, and work. I think he put on Instagram he's going to come back stronger, and hopefully he does. He's a good fighter, and I love to see him fight. But moving on the fight, the one we also talked about in the DMs, Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown. You were so determined that Matt Brown was going to win this fight, and how did it play out?
Matt Brown just had terrible cardio. He had an atrocious performance. I thought that Matt Brown could have won this fight using his wrestling, but we saw that after one round of being on top, he can. And when he was on top, he wasn't active. That's why every judge gave that first round to Carlos Condit off of his back because they show the striking numbers. I believe it was a 20 strike differential, and if Matt Brown was on top, there was no reason why Matt Brown was going to win if he had terrible cardio. When you have somebody like Carlos Condit who went 5 rounds with Robbie Lawler and arguably won, you just can't have bad cardio against someone like Carlos Condit. And Carlos Condit, he really shocked me. I always thought that Carlos Condit had bad takedown defense, and in this one he showed really good takedown defense. He took down Matt Brown himself. And Carlos Condit looks like he's near the end of his career, but he still has a couple good ones left in him.
Yeah, I agree. He was good on his feet as well. Carlos Condit has always been known for his striking, but I thought in this fight he looked crisper, and especially from his last fight, he looked much crisper. And he had like that more pop to it. He had that little bit more a little bit more pop, a little bit more power to his strikes, and he was doing the combinations really good. Switched it up really nicely, and just Matt Brown in the whole 3 rounds threw 52 total strikes uh, compared to Carlos Condit's 209. As you said there, the cardio. Matt Brown was on top for the first round, and that was it. That's all he could handle. And Carlos Condit, went on to
It's
30-20.
unfortunate.
Yeah, 30-27, 30-27, 30-27 on all boards. I do believe the first round could have went Matt's way, but it didn't. But, as you said there, Carlos Condit was more active on the ground. Matt Brown was just kind of in his guard and just staying there. He was content with it, and he thought that would get in the round. But in the judges' eyes, it didn't really work. You can't. There's no guarantees in this sport. If you get a takedown and you sit there and the other guy's striking, you could lose the round, and we've seen it. There was a
Yep.
Carlos Condit took the round in the judges' scorecard, and unfortunately, Matt Brown lost that fight. His gas tank went, and Carlos Condit, took over the fight in round 2 and 3, and that's what happened. Carlos Condit, as I said, there got a few more left in him. He was on a 4 or 5 fight losing streak, and then he beat Court McGee,
Yeah.
and then obviously now he's beat Matt Brown, so he's 2 back-to-back. He said that he's got a few left in him as well. Matt Brown is obviously coming to the end of his career. It won't surprise me with the UFC cuts if he's soon to go. I don't think the UFC will probably see any potential in him now. And he's old, he's a veteran. He'll probably move on, go into Bellator or something like that. That's what I would like to see Matt Brown go. I don't want him to take any unnecessary damage. I just want to see, maybe the UFC let him go and see him go elsewhere. But the main event of the evening, an absolute cracker that we had on in store with us today. Max Holloway against Calvin Kattar. Before this fight, a lot of people were saying that Calvin Kattar's a beast. On his feet, his boxing's crisp, he's sharp, he's good, his combinations are great. And oh man, did Max Holloway shut them haters up. He looked phenomenal. That first round, that told the whole story in the fight already. That first round is all I needed to see. I saw Max Holloway crisp, sharp, the best boxer out the two. He was so good on the feet, and Max Holloway proved that he is probably one of the best boxers in the featherweight division. And he just showed that Calvin Kattar is not on their level at the moment. He's a good guy. He's a really good fighter, but Max Holloway made him look average in this fight. He made him look like a B-level competition fighter, and he's not. He's not. Calvin Kattar's not a B-level competition fighter. He's a really good fighter. He went that 3 rounds with Zabit Magomedsharipov, and caused some problems for Zabit in the third round at the end. But there was no problems for Max. Max's cardio, man. I think he threw was it 746 strikes Max Holloway threw in this fight. That was a record. Incredible. How do you see this? What did you think about Max Holloway's performance?
This might have been the greatest performance I've ever seen. I could not believe what I was seeing as I was watching this fight. Max Holloway might have the greatest cardio in UFC history. If you saw what he was doing, he never stopped. He never stopped. He said he was tired. Some guys get tired during 3 round fights, and in the fourth round, he was swinging for the fences. He was hitting him with elbows, with kicks. The fact that Calvin Kattar never left his feet is unbelievable. Just straight up unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin Kattar has one of the best chins that I can think of. Max Holloway hit him with everything but the kitchen sink. I just think that Max Holloway is as good as you can get. I think he's the best featherweight we've ever seen. That performance definitely earns him a title shot after this. I think we're going to see him as champion in 2021.
I agree with you. You said there he's the best featherweight we've seen of all time. In my opinion, he's the best heavyweight we have at the moment. I think he beat Volkanovski in the last fight, and I think if they fought again, he beats him. He beats him. I think he looks so good in this fight. He looks rejuvenated. But Brian Ortega, he's a real competition for Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski can't take Brian Ortega down. That jiu-jitsu, man, he's so good. You don't know what he can throw up at any moment. But Brian Ortega, as we saw in his last fight, looked crisp, looked really good on his feet, and absolutely clinic against Chan Sung Jung. And then Max Holloway, enters the frame once again. He's always been there, and with an absolute dominant performance against Calvin Kattar, and how good he was on the feet. 50-42, 50-43, 50-43. One judge gave two 10-8 rounds to Max Holloway. Wait. Yeah, three rounds.
I agree with that too.
Wait, 50-42, so that would be three 10-8 rounds.
Yes. I only scored two.
Whew. Some judge gave Max Holloway three 10-8 rounds. That's how dominant he was in this fight. I'm looking at the ESPN picture of the fight right here, and Calvin Kattar's body's just red. Everything that showed how well Max Holloway mixed it up. He went to the body, he went to the legs, he went to the head, he went to his legs, he went to his calves, he went to everything. He pieced it up so well, and his combinations were brilliant. And Max Holloway puts himself back onto the map, back into the title contention frame, and he's probably got himself a shot at the belt after Ortega versus Volkanovski. In my opinion, the best case scenario for Holloway is if Ortega beats Volkanovski. I think that's a better for him. I think if he goes in there against Ortega, beats him, and then Volkanovski will be able to get that shot, and then it kind of makes more sense. If theoretically Volkanovski's still 2-0 versus Max. A lot of people thought he won the second fight, Volkanovski. A lot of people thought he won the first. He did win the first, but the second fight, it could have went either way. I thought Max Holloway won. It's ridiculous, but whatever happens in the future, if it's Ortega or Volkanovski, I think Max Holloway regains the belt.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that was the end of UFC Fight Island 7, Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar. We're going to swiftly move on to the next fight, which is UFC Fight Island Chiesa versus Magny. And
8.
Yeah, UFC Fight Island 8, yeah. Or was it UFC on ESPN 20? Or something like that. But yeah, in the first fight of the evening, a women's flyweight bout. And it's I don't know how to pronounce her name. Oh God, that's gonna.
Her name.
That's a different.
It's. I think she's French, right? She's French.
Yes.
So you might have to put the accent on it.
Go on then.
I took French for like 3 years. I'm still taking it.
Far
I don't
away.
know what I'm doing.
Go on then.
Far away, something like that. Yeah.
No, I said far away. You try. Manu Fleur. Versus Victoria Leonardo.
All right, we'll go with that.
Yeah, she's 5-1. French. Looks like the UFC are trying to build up their French fighters since it's legalized now in the sport of MMA. All her wins have been by stoppage. All her wins have been in stoppage. And so, except from one, she had one decision. Or her last 3 fights, she's knocked. She's finished the fight by TKO. I don't really know too much about this girl, unfortunately. Either about the other girl, either. I don't know what to say about this fight. She earned her contract though versus Chelsea Hackett, a Contender Series 2020 at the end of Contender Series in the 11th month, which is November, and she's lost against Erin Blanchfield before, and she's lost against Miranda Maverick. She's fought some really good competitions. 8-2. Victoria Leonardo versus Manu Floritz. What's your opinion on this fight, and who do you think it goes to?
Yeah, I don't know too much about these two either, but I did see Victoria Leonardo's performance on the Contender Series, and I was impressed. I do think that Viroch is not as impressive. She hasn't fought the best competition. She was able to put him away early. She has a lot of power, but Her ground game has a lot left to be desired, and I think Victoria Leonardo just takes it down, and we see unanimous decision.
Nice, nice. I like it. I like it. She fought Leah McCourt. If you know who she is, she fought Leah McCourt in her debut, and that's her lone loss in her UFC, not UFC, in her career in MMA. It was her debut in MMA, and she lost against Leah McCourt, who's a Bellator fighter, Bellator featherweight, who just beat Judith Reese at Bellator 240. She goes back and forth with Chris Cyborg a lot, and them two want to have a fight down the road. But anyway, that's her alone loss against Leah McCourt at Cage Warriors 94 back in 2018 when she started her career. Moving on to the fight, Khabib's cousin Umar Nurmagomedov takes on Sergey Morozov in the second fight of the evening at bantamweight. How do you see this fight going, and who do you think wins?
Obviously, Umar. Umar is Khabib's cousin. There's other Nurmagomedovs in the UFC, and they don't do as well. But he's already undefeated. I think that Umar should get the submission win here. I think he'll be dominant. We're gonna be making comparisons to Khabib, obviously, because they're family, and he's gonna be very dominant, and we're gonna see something really special from Umar in the future.
If you're coming into the UFC with your second name being Nurmagomedov, you've got a lot of pressure on your shoulders already. It's ridiculous what Khabib has done for his surname in the sport of MMA. But his opponent, he's on a 5-fight winning streak. It finished 3 of his last 5. The last fight was a decision, but he's stepping up in short notice as well. I believe as well. I think this is a fight. Oh, actually,
This fight was already
it's been rescheduled a lot of times. Yeah, I remember now. But yeah, it's been rescheduled. This is the second time now. Hopefully they run it. But Umar Nurmagomedov, he fought on the 11th month of 2019 on November 2019. He was meant to fight Hunter Asura in 2020 and Nathaniel Wood and Sergey Morozov. But now he gets to finally fight inside the UFC. And as you said, I see a submission coming from him. If you're having Nurmagomedov surname, you're gonna be good. You're gonna be good. That's all I gotta say. He's gonna win this fight, and he's gonna probably get a submission win. Who do we got in the next fight? This is a really good fight. Mike Davis versus Mason Jones, the 2-weight Cage Warriors champion at lightweight and welterweight, stepping in the UFC career, making his UFC debut versus Mike Davis, who's a really good fighter. This is a really good a good test for him in his UFC debut. In his last fight, he beat Thomas Guilford, but with absolute beating. It was an absolute beating, I think, and just with that right cross finished him in the round 3. But this guy's lost to Gilbert Burns. He's fought some really in his UFC debut as well. They give him Gilbert Burns. Ridiculous, man. But yeah, he got submitted in that fight. Round 2, he made it to round 2 versus Gilbert Burns. That's a moral victory. But and then he came back with an absolute destruction win versus Thomas Guilford, and now he's facing Mason Jones, who's 10-0 in his UFC MMA career, fighting out of Wales. The two-weight Cage Warriors champion. In his last fight, he knocked out Adam Proctor in round number 1. He's finished a lot of his fights, and in this fight, I think he finishes Mike Davis as well. I'm not, because I'm British and I'm trying to favour the man, but I think he finishes Mike Davis in this fight. He's 25 years old. He's young. He's hungry, and he gets the finish.
I gotta disagree with you. I think Mike Davis is a force to be reckoned with. In his fight against Thomas, he brutalized him. The crowd was booing because the ref would not stop the fight. When's the last time you see that? It beating so horrific that the crowd wants to see it stop. It's rare that the crowd
It's usually
agrees with the disagrees with the referee to that extent.
The fans are usually booing because
it's say, it's not really stop.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. An absolute brutalization from Mike Davis. Continue your point.
Yeah, Mike Davis. He's more seasoned. He's only lost to Gilbert Burns and I believe Yusuf, right? Sadiq Yusuf.
Yes, that's correct. And back in 2018 in the Contender Series.
Yeah, yeah, you only lose to Burns and Yusuf. Those are the best of the best. And I think that he's got more power than Jones. I think that he's fought the better competition and he's got that UFC experience. So I expect him to get his hand raised by split decision. I'll give Mason Jones that respect.
I think that's a good point you put there. You know, he's more experienced inside the UFC. And that's a huge factor when it comes into a fight. You know, if you haven't experienced what it's like to walk out into the UFC, Mason Jones is going to be feeling it that night. You know, the pressure, the nerves. You know, he's going to be coming in very, very, nervous to make his UFC walk. That could play a factor. Mike Davis might take the win. That's a really good point. It's a good fight nonetheless. I'm excited to see Mason Jones and how he looks that night. Moving on, a very good. I was about to say I just spoke to Jerome Rivera, but that was Adrian Yanez. They both look so similar. So Jerome Rivera taking on Davison Figueiredo's brother. It says here bantamweight, but is it a flyweight maybe, or is it at bantamweight?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain. I do know they both fought at both weight classes.
We
I
shall
believe it's bandweight.
we shall know tomorrow. The weigh-ins are on tomorrow and Tuesday because this is a Wednesday night fight. Monday was it Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. Incredible. I love it. Francisco Figueiredo, Davison Figueiredo's is his brother, younger brother that I never knew existed. Never knew existed. You know, he fight in his last fight. He fought in a draw in decision versus Eduardo Souza. He's fought. He hasn't. Who was a rematch that he lost to against in 2017. They fought again, and he's fought John Lineker once upon a time back in 2011. He lost that fight, a jungle fight. He's been around the regional scene in Brazil, had a few fights at a power, but you know he's been over in Brazil doing his thing in the regional scene. Hasn't fought the best of competition. When it steps up, when he fights the good fighters, he's lost. But you know, let's see if he's got what it takes. You know, he's Figueiredo's brother. He's got to have some skill set. But you know, Jerome Rivera, on the other hand, 10-3 in his mixed martial arts career. In his last fight, he got knocked out by Tyson Nam, but you know that guy's a beast. He's a beast at the moment. You know when he made his UFC debut against Tyson Nam, but you know Jerome Rivera, you know he's lost against the likes of Brandon Royval and Roberto Sanchez, who's undefeated when they fought. And Brandon Royval, we know who he is now because he surged to the top, and now he's one of the top contenders in the flyweight division. But if you look at Jerome Rivera, I
Yeah.
talked about Francisco Figueiredo not fighting the best of competition. The records Jerome fought here is 0-0, 2-2, 0-1, 0-0, 6-2, 6-7, 5-3, 7-10, 8-5. Some very questionable opponents. Then when he steps up to the good guys, he's lost. He's lost against Roberto Sanchez, Brandon Royval, and then Tyson Nam. In this fight, will he step up against Francisco Figueiredo? Will Francisco Figueiredo have enough to win the fight? I'm not too sure. I think this is a very even fight, and in my opinion, I think Jerome Rivera will take it because I don't know what to think about this fight. I don't know them too much about both men, but I know Jerome Rivera. You know he's good on the ground. He's got some good submission skills, but that's about it. What's your take?
I do think that Jerome. Oh well, I do think that Jerome Rivera has fought somewhat better competition because he did have a contender series fight,
Yep.
and on contender series they don't really have bums on there, and I do think that Jerome Rivera might be a little bit quicker. Jerome Rivera really looked great in his contender series fight. He got the unanimous decision. I think that's why he didn't get the contract initially. Dana didn't give him the contract because he didn't finish the fight. And Dana's very picky about that. He likes to reward people who get finishes, but he ended up bringing him to the UFC anyway because they needed a fight for Tyson Nam, who was booked to fight Matt Schnell, and that fight is happening on this card later. But yeah, Tyson Nam ended up fighting him and knocked him out. And you gotta have questions about his chin, but you also have to have questions about Francisco Figueiredo's chin. The siblings in MMA, one's usually not as good, to be honest, like Antonina and Valentina.
Pettis.
Nick and Nate are pretty even. Jim Miller's brother, I know, wasn't as good.
Yeah. Anthony
There's
Pettis,
always
Sergio
that
Pettis,
inferior
yeah.
sibling.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this might be the case here, and I'm not gonna pick Figueiredo's brother just because it's Figueiredo's brother. So I'll go with Jerome Rivera because he's fought in the Contender Series, and I think he'll win by split decision.
A very controversial one. Nick, Nate.
Oh yeah, I said they were pretty even.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Nate has eclipsed his brother, with the Conor rivalry, but I would have to say Nick is definitely better because of his run in Strike Force.
Getting that belt in Strike Force, and absolutely incredible run Nick did over there for Scott Coker once upon a time. Yeah, I have Jerome Rivera in this fight as well. I think he takes it. I think I'm not too sure on Figueiredo, but we'll swiftly move on. Dolce, oh god, Dolce Luganbalula. Oh my god, I call him Dolce for this. Dolce versus Marcus Perez. Marcus Perez, the Joker, the one who does his makeup, as the Joker of the Batman. Hasn't really paid off for him though. In his last two fights, he lost against Wellington Turman, and in his last fight, he got knocked out viciously by the South African Diricus du Plessis. Oh god, a very good fighter in his own right.
I just call that guy DDP.
DDP, there we go. DDP
I just call that guy DDP. Yeah.
wasn't that a wrestler once upon a time? DDP.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
really popular in the late '90s.
That's why I recognise that name. But he's an American top team fighting Dolce. I think Dolce takes this fight. And this is at 205 pounds, I believe. Yeah, this is at light heavyweight. This is a weight that Marcus Perez don't fight at.
Oh,
And Dolce is a big, he's a big guy.
interesting.
He's a big, if you see the size and the frame of Dolce, if you look at him as well, he's a physical specimen. He definitely carries that power. And we've seen it in his debut versus Daquan Townsend when he knocked him out. But yeah, I think Dolce Townsend, Dolce goes in this fight, knocked out Marcus Perez, and unfortunately goes three losses back to back. That's my take on it. I think Dolce wins, knocks him out. What's your opinion?
Yeah, Marcus Perez has only been knocked out once, and it was his last fight. He went for a spinning back fist, I believe, and he got caught right behind the head, and that put him out. That's what happens with Marcus Perez. He does pretty well. He's even submitted Ian Heinisch, but he gets too flashy, and he does something silly, and he just gets caught. Usually doesn't get knocked out though. He usually uses it by a decision. So that's what I expect him to do. I expect him to do something silly. I expect Dolce to get a unanimous decision, but I do believe he'll do significant damage to Perez.
You said there he submitted Ian Heinisch. He submitted some really good guys in his career. Anthony Hernandez as well. Once upon a time, he submitted in 2019 as well. Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, that's a good win. And you said there Ian Heinisch as well, a guy who's in the top 15 of the middleweight division, a guy who's slated to fight Kevin Gastelum in a few weeks, maybe if I'm correct.
Gastelum.
Yeah, that's a really good
Yeah, I
guy.
think that's on the pay per view. Yeah.
Is it 257 or is it after that one?
258.
258.
That's the Usman Burns card.
Woo! That's a
February
great fight.
13th.
Great fight. Absolutely love that fight. I think that's a really good 50-50 fight there between. I don't know who I'm choosing in that fight, but we got a long time for me to decide. Watch tape, see who I'm deciding on. Anyway, I think in this fight, I see Dolce taking it and maybe getting the stoppage later on. Who have we got after Dolce versus Perez? We have these names get harder and harder to pronounce. I need your help, Oscar. You're really good with names.
I actually don't have the fights pulled up. Sumaderji.
Yeah, Madershi.
Sumaderji.
Yeah, and versus Serika Adishev.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, this is ridiculous. Some of these names. Yeah, Adishev got a really hard opponent in his debut in the UFC. They gave him Tyson Nam. It was ridiculous. And then he got knocked out bad in that fight as well. But, he was in Bellator once upon a time, fought 3 times, got 2 knockouts over there. But, he's 3-2 in his MMA career, he must have had some sort of kickboxing background, maybe something for him to be really high value to the UFC to sign someone who's only got 4 fights in his MMA career. You've got to have some special ability about yourself, some background, great background in his career. But you know, he came into his UFC debut versus Tyson Nam and got viciously knocked out in that fight. It was a really good knockout from Tyson Nam, who's been knocking everyone out as of late. But now he's taken in against Sue Medici. I'm going to go with that one. Sue Medici, in his last fight, knocked out Malcolm Gordon. So he's got some power in his hands. But he's been submitted before. He's been submitted by Lewis Smoker and Hay Bin Ma. And also against Abdullah Aliyev. So he's been submitted. He's submittable. But does Adeshev have that in his locker? I believe not. I think he's a stand-up fighter. If I'm correct in my knowledge, he's been, and he is. Adeshev has also been submitted before in his debut in MMA in 2015. But you know, I think he's a really good stand-up fighter. And Sue wants to stand up as well. In his last fight, he knocked out Malcolm Gordon. This is a really good fight, and I think Sue's going to take it. I think Adeshev's just too inexperienced, in my opinion.
Yeah, Sumaderji fought Malcolm Gordon and knocked him out in about a minute, and it wasn't because of the that Malcolm Gordon lost consciousness. It was just he made him quit with the amount of power that he possesses.
Mm.
Sumaderji has next level power, and he's going to use it to put out Adashev. He's going to knock him out very early on. I think this is a lock. After we took that break, Oscar's lock kind of faded, but Oscar's lock of the night, that's the lock of the night. I sent you the lock of the night while we're taking a break. Let's not count that, especially since one of them was a guest on this podcast.
Adeshev, when he stepped in to fight Tyson Nam, that fight was at bantamweight, and he missed weight. So this fight is at flyweight. Will he make it? Will he make it? I don't know. You know, has he been making it in his career? A quick look back in his last fight against Bellator, he did make it, and he stepped in 125.5. But I knew he stepped in at short notice against Tyson Nam. I believe it was very short notice. They called upon him within a few days, maybe a week. It was, it's very hard for him to cut down to 135. I can't
Yeah, he
imagine.
was a contender series guy.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, unfortunately he missed weight. But he got knocked out in that fight. But he's taken Sue Maderashi. Times for him to really bounce back, put himself on the map, and win in the column. But I think Sue Maderashi, as he stood there in his first against Malcolm Gordon, made him quit in 44 seconds. That proves the power he has in his hands. He's beat Andre Sukumtar as well. He beat Malcolm Gordon. I think he takes a win against Adeshev. I think he knocks him out as well. And we've seen Adeshev been knocked out 135 pounds. When he cuts down to 125 pounds, he might be more vulnerable. When you get that weight cutting, when you've cut too much weight, I don't know how much weight he cuts. I don't know whether it's comfortable for him. We're gonna soon find out. But Sue, in my opinion, takes this fight, and he takes it in spectacular fashion in like his last fight. Moving on to the
I agree.
Yep. Moving on to the seventh fight of the card, Ricky Simon versus Gettiano Piriello of the Belgium, and a guy that I've haven't really heard of. He's making his UFC debut on short notice. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. In his last fight, he won in round number 1 with a liver shot. The European beatdown number 7 back in September of 2019. He hasn't fought didn't fight in 2020. This will be his first fight in a year and a bit away. I don't know too much about him, so in my opinion, I think I'm gonna have to pick Ricky Simeone. He's a really good fighter as well. In his last fight, beat Ray Borg. He's beat Rani Yaha as well in his career. Built Monte Jackson. He even he even beat controversially. Was it a win? Was it not a win? He he guillotined Marab Duvashvili. He's a really good fighter. But he lost against Uriah Faber, and when Uriah Faber came back, Uriah Faber knocked him out. Lost to Rob Font. Rob Font is now one of the top 5 in the world, and he beat in his last fight against Ray Borg, a split decision. I think he takes this fight. I think he's the more experienced in the UFC. As you made a point earlier, when you come into the UFC, you're gonna be nervous. You're gonna be shaky. When you're making that walk to the UFC, it's just you're bricking it. You are. And Ricky Simone, he's experienced that before, and therefore he's going to be more calmer, more comfortable in the cage, and he's going to take the win. In my opinion, I think Ricky Simone takes the win. What about you?
Yeah, this was supposed to be Kelleher versus Simone. Kelleher had a pulled out due to COVID. Such a shame. That was gonna be a competitive fight, but now I just think this is a fight for Simone to stay busy and to get a unanimous decision win. I just think Simone has been in the UFC. He's co-main evented with Uriah Faber. He lost that, of course, but he's been in the UFC for a long time. He's stayed in there with the best, and I just think his opponent is over his head fighting him, and that's why Simone is such a big favorite.
Yeah, I think Simone takes it. I think he takes it as well. I think he's a really good fighter. In his last fight, I've mentioned before, he beat Ray Borg, who went on to retire, but then came out of retirement, I believe. So he's not retired anymore. But he was scheduled to fight Nate Maness, but then he retired. Then didn't he get cut? Maybe did he get cut then retired?
He did get cut.
Yeah.
With the guy being that unreliable, you just got to make that decision.
So, but then he came out of retirement, said it was an emotional decision, and now he's back in the MMA scene. I haven't heard much about him trying to fight, but hopefully he fights soon. But I think Ricky Simone takes his fight against the Belgian Getiano. And moving on to a really good fight, in my opinion, Omar Ahmedov versus Tom Breeze, the British fighter fighting out of if I'm correct, maybe London Shoot Fighters. I'm not too sure, but in his last fight against KD Boulahar, that power jab and the hammer fist in round number 1. We saw the power this man possesses at 185 pounds. But can he get his hands on Omar Ahmedov before maybe he looks to shoot? Is it a story of a fight that is it maybe can he keep him off the ground? Omar Ahmedov, though, he's an experienced guy. In his UFC debut, he's fought Gunnar Nelson, Sergio Moraes, Alexei Salazki. In his last fight, he fought Chris Weidman. He's fought so many guys: Ian Heinisch, Zach Cummins, Tim Boach. He went to a draw with Marvin Vittori, who's now top 5 in the division. He beat Abdul Razak Al Hassan in a split decision. He's fought so many guys in the UFC. And Tom Breeze, on the other hand, he's been in the UFC for only a few fights. Yet it's his 3rd fight in the UFC. Actually, no, he's been in the UFC for quite a bit. Hold on, he made his UFC debut in
Yeah.
2015, and then when he fought Luz Dolce Jr. He's fought Sean Strickland. Daniel Kelly knocked him out. I remember that now. And he does a lot of grappling. He got finished by Brendan Allen back in 2020 at the start of the year. And then he came back with a KO of his own versus the undefeated KD Boulahar. And now he fights Omar Ahmedov, a very tough test in front of him. But I think Umar takes this fight and he returns back to the winning column. Before he lost to Chris Weidman, he was on a bit of a win streak. He was on a 3-fight winning streak before the draw, and then he was on a good win streak. But Umari, he's open to being knocked out. He's been knocked out before in his career, twice in his UFC career. He also got guillotine choked back in the day as well by Gunnar Nelson, and in his second pro fight. But can Tom Breeze put his hands on Umar Ahmedov? I'm not too sure. I don't think so. I think Umar Ahmedov takes his fight to the floor.
I gotta agree with you this time. I'm gonna have to pick against Breeze. Breeze to begin with. He's quit before fights, before walking out. He's quit. He's his mental state really determines if he's gonna show up on the night of the fight. And I just don't think he's very reliable. And as you were saying, Omari, was on a 5-fight unbeaten streak. He went to a trial with Marvin Vettori, who's top five now, and Omari is a grinder. He's a grappler. His cardio isn't great, striking isn't great, but he can surely get you down and control you, and that's what I expect to see here from him.
100%, I
I
agree.
think he'll get it done by unanimous decision.
Perfect, perfect. I agree. A great fight on the card, and moving on to the main.
Oh, oh,
What's that?
oh, it's he's actually the underdog. So if you're interested in betting that, he's plus $135. I mean, he's plus 135, and I think that's a good price for him.
Wow. Bets with Oscar. That's that section over. Moving on to the
Yeah,
main card. Lerone Murphy versus Douglas Silva DeAndre. A really good fight at featherweight. Lerone Murphy, we've seen how good he is in his last fight. You know, he knocks out Ricardo. I was about to say Ricardo Ramos, but it was Ricardo Ramos in his last fight.
Ramos.
Ramos. In his last fight, knocked out Ricardo Ramos. And before that, you know, he fought Zabira Tagigov. Zabira Tagigov.
Dahugov.
Tahugov. Oh, dear.
Dahugov.
Tahugov. Zabira Tahugov. And then his last fight, you know, I said there, knocked out Ricardo Ramos. And he actually took him down in that fight. Then he ground and pounded him. We're seeing how impressive Lerone Murphy is in how good he is as well. Yeah, I think he takes this fight as well. I think he beats Douglas Andre. I think this Douglas Andre quit on the... It was the guy who quit on the stool against Peter Yan. Yeah, this guy quit on the stool against Peter Yan.
I think
In round two, he quit on the stool. At UFC 232, he quit on the stool against Peter Yan. In his last fight, he beat Hernan Barao. But if you're fighting Hernan Barao recently, in respect to Hernan Barao, it's quite a free win. I kind of, you know, he's been cut by the UFC since
yeah.
he was on a 5 fight losing streak. So that was kind of a free win for Douglas Andre. And now he fights Lerone Murphy. And I think Lerone Murphy gets it done in a spectacular fashion again. I think he gets a knockout and moves up in the division. And, you know, hopefully, you know, he gets a ranked opponent in the near future. What's your opinion?
Yeah, Andrade has a really good record, but I just think Lerone Murphy is on his way up to the top of the division. I think Murphy has a lot of power. He's very well rounded. And I don't think he'll get the knockout here because Andrade, he's got a pretty decent chin, and I think Murphy will win by decision. And I think he should be able to dominate wherever the fight goes.
Mm-hmm. I agree, but about everything. But I think Lerone Murphy, you know, has that power in his hands, and maybe, you know, it's going to be the same situation with Pete Yan. You know, Pete Yan had a lot of power in his hand, made him quit on the stool, and I think maybe not quit on the stool, but you know, he'll get the knockout in the fight. As you said today, he has a really good record. 26-3. He's beat Marlon Vieira back in the day of 2018. You know, he's beat some good guys in his career. He lost against Zubira Hugov, Rob Font, and then Peter Yan. That's his only 3 losses in his career. Other than that, you know, he's been perfect. But moving on to the fight, I think
That's very impressive.
absolutely. You know, 26-3 in your MMA career. That's really impressive. And but I think Lerone Murphy's on a different wavelength at the moment. Momentum is, and you know, in his last fight, knocking out Ricardo Ramos in a really good fashion, taking him to the floor and finishing him on the floor. It was great, impressive from Lerone Murphy, and I think he's going to get another KO on Fight Island where he got his other KO. 10th fight of the evening, we have Tyson Nam versus Matt Chanel, a fight that's been scheduled a few times now. Tyson Nam recently has been knocking everyone out. Matt Chanel of ATT in his last fight got knocked out by Alexandre Peixoto. And, you know, when you look at that, you think, could he get knocked out by Tyson Nam? He's been knocked out before. He's been knocked out 3 times in his career. And, you know, that's not looking good when you're coming up against Tyson Nam. As of late, Tyson Nam's been knocking everyone out. If you look at his record here, in his last fight, he fought who was it? Jerome Rivera. We mentioned him earlier. He knocked him out. Adishev, he knocked him out. You know, he's fought some good guys as well. Tyson Nam in his debut, in his career, he fought Sergio Pettis in his debut, lost the decision. Fought Kai Kara France, lost the decision. You know, but since then he's rejuvenated himself, knocked out Adishev, knocked out Jerome Rivera, and I think he's going to follow it up with a knockout KO win versus Matt Schnell. What do you reckon?
I gotta agree with you once again. I think Matt Schnell's chin is not that great. I think this is a striker versus grappler matchup. I think Matt Schnell's only way to win is by submission, and I think Naim should be able to get out of those submission attempts, and he should put him asleep pretty early.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tyson Nam puts his hands on him very early, as you said there, and gets the knockout win, and moves to three back-to-back wins, and maybe gets a ranked opponent. If not, Matt Chanel might already be ranked. I'm not too sure. That flyweight division is very.
Matt Schnell,
No, Tyson
I
Nam's
think
ranked
he's ranked
number
pretty
nine.
low.
Number nine is Matt
Oh
Chanel.
yes.
Tyson Nam is 13th. So if he gets a win, he'll probably move up to 10, 11, and get maybe a higher opponent in maybe Brandon Royval, maybe something like that next. But yeah, as we mentioned, I think Tyson Nam takes the fight, knocks him out, and then moves to three wins in a row. Who we got next in a really weird one? Roxanne Motherfairy versus Viviana Arujo. Yeah, Roxanne Motherfairy, as of recently, has been a rematch merchant. She's been rematching everyone in her career. But she's always been win one, lose one, win one, lose one, and in her last fight she beat Andrea Lee, and then hope if she that's this is a sign for me to say that she's going to lose this fight, because when she wins, she loses her next. In my opinion, she's going to lose this fight against Viviana Arujo. It's just a story of her career. But you know, I think Viviana Arujo is a really good fighter. She has some heavy hands. She's got a knockout in the UFC when she hit Tatiana Bernardo with that overhand right at UFC 237, Namulis versus Andrade. But you know, she's knocked out quite a lot of people in her career. She's had a referee stoppage. She's had a lot of she's had a heel hook, but she's been submitted in her career. But never mind, she hasn't. She's been knocked out before, not submitted. But she has a lot of submissions on her career as well. But I think she has them heavy hands. In her last fight, she beat Montana De La Rosa by unanimous decision, and I think she beats Roxanne Motherfairy, and she improves improves to two wins back to back. Her loss in the UFC came against Jessica.I back in when was it? Jessica.I back in UFC 245, Usman versus Covington. That was a loss in the UFC. Other than that, she's fought Montana De La Rosa, beat Montana De La Rosa, beat Alexis Davis and Tatiana Bernardo. How do you see this fight going? Who you picking? Roxanne Motherfairy or Viviana Arujo?
I'm going to disagree with you. I think Roxanne Modafferi is continuously disrespected by the bettors. If you look at the odds, Viviana Arujo is a huge favorite, and that's what happens with Roxanne fights. She's a huge underdog, and she pulls off the win by out-grappling her opponent. And she's actually way bigger than Viviana Arujo. If you look at them side by side, she's more massive, and I think that's how she's going to win this fight. I think she's going to be able to take her down, control her, and get a split decision win. I just see Roxanne shocking everyone again. People always count her out, and she just pulls off these huge upsets. I think that Andrea Lee is much better than Viviana Arujo, and if Roxanne can beat her, I don't see why she can't beat Viviane.
Yeah, you put it perfectly there. When Roxanne's in a fight, everyone counts her out, and I've counted her out in this fight. I think Viviana gets it done. But you know, in a maybe upset of the year in 2020, Macy Barber versus Roxanne Modafferi. You know, or was it 2020 at the start of 2020 at the McGregor versus Cerrone. She got that win against Macy Barber. Everyone thought Macy Barber was going to go in there and knock her out and then prove to the division and go on to do better things. But, Roxanne Motherfairy put a halt to that. I think she even knocked her down in that fight. I think she knocked her down, which was incredible. That was definitely unexpected. And then she lost against Lauren Murphy, beat Adria Lee, the cowboy, the women's cowboy of the division. And then she fought. Now she's fighting Viviana Ruggi. But wait, she hasn't had. When was the last time she had back-to-back wins? That would have been in 2017.
A long time
That would
ago.
have been in 2017 when she wasn't in the UFC and fighting in Fusion Fight League and Invicta. Yep, that was something. But now she's a crafty veteran though. You mentioned that 25 wins and 17 losses in her career. She's 38. She's getting old, but as you said there, experience. Everyone counts her out. She uses her wrestling to get the job done. But I think Viviana Arujo gets this job done, and she improves to 10-2 in her UFC in her MMA career. Moving on. I don't know whether this is actually meant to be on. Is this actually on the main card? Ika Vivianieva.
Villanueva.
Oh god, Ek Vivianieva versus Vinicius
Something like that, yeah.
Maria. Maria?
Mahera,
Mejia.
yeah.
Vinicius Mejia. This is a fight that's on the main card, surprisingly. How do you see this fight going?
Both these guys have not gotten a win in the UFC. I do think that neither of them belong in the UFC. I think Isaac has more power though, and I think he'll put away Mahera really early on. I think he should just knock him out. I do believe that the Brazilian here has a shot at getting a submission, but I just don't trust him considering the fact that he's gotten submitted, he's gotten knocked out. I can't trust either of these guys to win, to be honest. So if you're stay away from this from a betting perspective, because this is a coin flip fight. But I'm just going with the first round knockout because it tends to happen at this level.
100%, I agree. Ek knocked out Rashad Coulter back in the not the reality, back in the regional scene in 2019. A guy that got cut from the UFC. Fought Chase Sherman, Taito Varsa, Chris De La Rocha, all them guys. But it was an impressive win. Got his shot out into the UFC after that. But then he lost against Chase Sherman, got knocked out. And then got knocked out. Got stopped by a doctor against Jordan Wright. And I think this fight is a very, very hard fight to choose because the both of them, as you said, they're not UFC quality. And you said that you put that perfectly. They're both not UFC quality. Vinicius Moreira. He's lost against Paul Craig, lost against Eric Anders, lost against Alonzo Menafield. The only way you could really pick someone in this fight, it would be Vinicius because he's fought the better competition. He's fought Alonzo Menfield, got knocked out. Fought Eric Anders, got knocked out. Fought against Paul Craig, got submitted. The only way I'm gonna pick Vinicius Moreira because he's fought the better competition. He's fought, he's really good on the ground. He's got a lot of submissions in his record. All his wins have come via submission, set from one back in 2016 when he got one via punches. But other than that, he's submitted everyone. So if he gets the fight to the ground, he might earn a submission win. I'm going to pick Vinicius Moreira in this fight, and he snaps that 3 fight wins losing skid and improves goes to the win column. But I'm not very confident on that. I think any guy could win. Main event. Co-main event of the evening. Looking back at this card, I can see it's not the greatest, not the most stacked, but the main event that's the good fight. That's the fight I'm looking most forward to. Obviously, in the co-main event we have Wanderlei Alves versus Munir Laziz, a guy that came into his UFC debut against his UFC debut was at Dubai. And it was against Abdul Razak Al Hassan. That was it.
Razak Al Hassan.
Yeah, in his UFC debut, and it looked great in that fight. His Muay Thai was brilliant. His striking was brilliant against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, who's got power as well. If you let him get close to you, touch you, you can put your lights out. Unless your name is Chaos Williams, you put his lights out. When we're talking about that's ridiculous. But Minar Lazes, he's a really good fighter, a really good point fighter, really good at his Muay Thai, his kickboxing, and I think that's going to be the story of this fight as well. And we've seen Alves been knocked out by James Krause. He was stopped against Randy Brown as well, but he also has a lot of finishes on his career as well. He has a lot of guillotine wins in his career. He even guillotined Colby Covington once upon a time in 2015. So this is the only guy to defeat Colby Covington other than Kamaru Usman. Who do you think takes this fight?
I think Lazez knocks him out, and I think Lazez will dominate the entire fight. I just think Lazez, his striking is excellent. And his fight with Hassan, he got hurt really bad. Hassan emptied his gas tank trying to put him away, and he could not. I just think Lazez is just way beyond him in the striking realm, and I think that Lazez said in an interview with the Schmo that he wants to finish him in the third round, and I will go with the third round because I think he can control this fight and get the unanimous decision. I mean, the third round stoppage.
All right, all right. I think I agree with you. I think Menez Lesnar takes this fight. His striking looks absolutely beautiful in his last fight against Abdul Razak Hassan in a close fight as well. But he got that unanimous decision win, and you pointed it out. And yeah, he moved on in his career, and he climbed to 10-1 in his MMA career. And now he's fighting Wallale Alves, and I think he gets that KO win and improves and moves on in the division. In the main event of the evening, the talking point, the most important one. Finally, we've got here, Oscar. After a long talk, we've finally got to the last topic before UFC 257. That will be a different video, but Michael Chiesa versus Neil Magny at UFC at 170 pounds. The main event, a short notice main event, 5 rounds. Oscar, who takes this fight?
I actually went back and forth with this card last week. 2 weeks ago, I talked to you and I said that Chiesa would submit him. Now I actually went on the Magny side. I thought about it. Chiesa's cardio has not been that great, and Magny trains in Colorado at Elevation, and those Team Elevation guys have great cardio. And Magny fought Kelvin Gastelum, and he did wonderful. He actually won that fight. A lot of people thought Kelvin would, but Magny was able to hang in there with someone as good as Kelvin Gastelum for 5 rounds and win. And I expect him to do the same thing here. As long as Magny doesn't get caught up in a submission early on, I think he'll control this fight. He's actually got a big reach advantage on him, and that should help him out here. He should stay at range. And I think that with the cardio in the later rounds just being a big advantage against Chiesa, we're just going to see Magny control him and piece him up later on and get the unanimous decision victory. How about you?
I agree with you. I think Magny gets that unanimous decision win. And if it goes to the ground, I think that's where Chiesa shines. We know how good his jiu-jitsu is. When he literally ragdolled who was it? He just kind of abused him, and it might I think it was at 170 pounds. I think he just tried out new Diego Sanchez. Diego Sanchez.
Diego Sanchez, yes.
But at 170 pounds, in that fight, it was literally Michael Chiesa trying out new submissions on Diego Sanchez. It was just a really and that Kimura as well versus Carlos Condit. Ooh, that was nasty, man. And but in his career at lightweight, he got submitted by Kevin Lee. Then he got submitted surprisingly versus Anthony Pettis. But this is a guy that cut a lot of weight to get down to 155 pounds. This guy is huge to get down to there. But yeah, I think Magny takes this. I think he's after his last fight, beat Robbie Lawler. He's on a 3-fight winning streak at the moment. He's calling a lot of people out as well. He's getting to Twitter. He's getting used to that. He's starting to call everyone out. And he's on a 3-fight winning streak. He beat Jing Liang Lee, Anthony Rocco Martin, Robbie Lawler, and now I think he's going to win in the main event versus Michael Chiesa. That's my pick. It will probably change tomorrow. I think I'll probably give it to Chiesa tomorrow. I don't know.
Yeah, it changes day by day. It's a very competitive matchup. I look forward to it. It's probably the best fight on this card, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. This is the main event is the best fight on the card. This is the one I'm most looking forward to, and but I'm gonna watch all the fights because I've got nothing else better to do. The fights are back. We're back. I'm happy. I can't wait for the fights there more than ever. But I'm gonna round off this long podcast with Oscar, my friend, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.